千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now. To be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process of the Tao. So chapter 63 is known as the without difficulty chapter. And that is a straightforward translation from the original Chinese title of the chapter, 无难章. The first character literally is to not have or to be without. The second character, the character in the middle, is hard or difficult or difficulty. And then the third character, the one on the right, is chapter. So string all of those together. This is the without difficulty chapter, or no difficulty chapter, if you prefer. And as I talked about before, people who are studying the Tao definitely get the idea that one of the main points of practicing, following, cultivating the Tao is that when you do so, life can be smooth and easy. And that's absolutely correct. Now, life can be smooth and easy with a very specific way of looking at the world, looking at life. And it is not easy because you don't do anything. That would be a misconception. It is easy because you do things in a skillful way, in a very specific way. And we're going to talk about that today. So here's 63. And what we did previously was that we went through a sectional analysis, but we looked at the original character, we looked at how they repeated themselves from line to line, and then we used that along with the context and the meaning of the lines to figure out exactly where the sections are. So every chapter of the Tao Te Ching is divided into different sections. And there's typically a beginning, a middle, and an end. Sometimes we see 3 sections, sometimes we see 4, and then there are other structures as well. There's no set format for the chapters of the Tao Te Ching, so each one is rather unique. In this particular one, we started out with 3 interesting lines that say, act without action, manage without meddling, taste without tasting. And we can see that the first 3 lines have the same middle character in common. So that forms a sort of a small repeating structure within the poetic overall structure of the chapter. So we talked about exactly what that meant to what does it mean to act without action, and this is an appearance of the Wu Wei concept, the so-called non-doing, but it's actually unattached actions. Then we also went through 4 and 5, and line 5 is actually where we ended up. So I want to recap what we talked about before, first by recapping lines 1 to 3. These 3 lines seem at first like it might be a Tao paradox. Manage without managing, act without acting, taste without tasting, that sort of thing. It is actually not a paradox. It is simple, but also very profound. It operates on 2 different levels, as we talked about before. where the higher level is the level of the Tao. And then we apply the meaning at the Tao level to the meaning at the personal level. So to remind everyone what we talked about, here's the table that we looked at. When we break up those 3 lines into 3 rows, and then in each line, we further break them up with the first character to be explained on the left-hand side, and then the following 2 characters to be explained on the right-hand side. This reveals the meaning of the 3 lines when we look at it as a reference to the Tao. So, as you can see in this table, the first line starts out in reference to the Tao accomplishing everything. That's the meaning of the first character there. It is to do, to act. And then the middle character and the last character together is the opposite, without action. But here, it doesn't mean that the Tao suddenly doesn't do anything or doesn't act. Tao is nature. Nature is constantly in motion. Nature is constantly doing things all the time. Even if it's just the weather, even if it's only the growth of the plants. Nature, there's always something happening at any instant, at any one time. So when we say Wu Wei in context of the Tao or nature itself, what we really mean isn't non-action or without action. Literally without action. What it actually means is the Tao doesn't try to do anything. It just does what it does. There's no straining or struggling to get something to happen in nature. Nature just follows the laws of nature, the Tao, if you will, so that things happen when they happen. And that takes us to the next row. The first character, shi, is to manage. So the management of the Tao means that it is the coordination of everything that happens in the world, in reality. Everything is somehow coordinated. So day turns into night, night turns into day, the seasons transition to one another. Everything has a certain way about it, or the Tao. And the description that I used previously is that the Tao is like a universal choreography, where everything is choreographed and coordinated. Things happen at the right time. Then, Wu Shi, what follows, is not the opposite of managing, so it doesn't mean that the Tao suddenly doesn't manage anything. What it means is that the Tao manages everything without extreme levels of management, which would veer into interference or meddling. The Tao does not interfere with anything or anyone. The Tao simply follows the laws of nature to let things happen as they are supposed to happen. If something was to fall on you, that's gravity at work. And if you were to suffer an injury, it's because you did not get out in time. If something good happens, it is because you have worked hard to make it happen, and you can reap the rewards of your hard work, and so on. Then the last row that we talked about, the last row can be very difficult to understand and typically has not been rendered in a comprehensible way in the majority of translations out there. So to taste, in the context of the Tao, it is about the zest of life. It is about the joy, the delicious taste of life, if you will. But then without tasting, well, what that means is that it's rather subtle. The real joys of life is not a temporary thrill. A temporary thrill is like spiciness. It's like a strong flavor. Whereas the taste of life in the Tao is much more subtle. and yet no less incredible and amazing. So the Tao is unexciting, remarkable, it's plain, it's bland, but those who learn to understand it, perceive it, and appreciate it, find that the Tao is the ultimate. So the example that we used last time is water. Water, certainly unexciting, unremarkable, plain and bland, and yet when you are really thirsty, perhaps after a long hike, there is nothing as exciting or remarkable, as great, as delicious as refreshing water, just plain and pure water. And that's a good metaphor for the Tao, commonly used in the Tao Te Ching. So as I said, we want to apply the 3 lines to the Tao itself at the macrocosmic level. And now we also need to apply the 3 lines to the personal level, as we talked about and explained last time. So I transition from the Tao itself to the Tao of life. So the same 3 lines appear, except now they apply to you and me and not to the greater Tao. So for us to act, to do something in the context of the Tao means actions that are appropriate, mindful, and centered upon the Tao, congruent with the Tao, in accordance with the Tao, or in alignment with the Tao. Pick whatever expression you like. It is Tao-centric action. That's what I call it here. Then, when we extend that further to Wu Wei, we're talking about in a very similar way as when it applied to the Tao, that there's no acting from personal agenda that would not be centered on the Tao, that would be centered upon a selfish impulse, and refrain from acting out of attachments. To be attached is to get in your own way. You can even end up sabotaging yourself. You can make it much harder than yourself than any obstacles from external sources. Therefore, the appropriate way to act in the Tao is to do things, but not from the perspective of attachment, to focus on the process and let the results speak for themselves. Then we have the manage without meddling. So to manage is to know and understand what has to be done. It's to make sure that things are done at the appropriate time. So you may have a project that has a due date attached to it. You may have things that are scheduled. You may have tasks that you know you have to get done at a certain time today. So these are all within the purview of your own personal management of your tasks. And there may be a collection of tasks. There may be projects. There may be larger plans, including multiple tasks that you have to work on. And they must all be managed and planned. So then, without meddling, without interference, that's all about managing without micromanaging. No micromanagement, no going overboard with the backseat driving, no interference, no meddling. Then the last row, to taste. In our case, at the personal level, it means to get a taste of whatever the situation is that you're in the middle of, and also to get the flavor of life that you are living. What is that flavor like? Is it sweet? Is it bitter? Is it sour? Now, without tasting, there is no need for strong flavors of the material world. What I mean by that is the pursuit of material things. So when we're younger, we're definitely very much caught up in that. We want all the material goodness that we can get our hands on. As we progress in life, we begin to see that material pursuits ultimately end up in nothingness. It ends up in a bottomless pit. There's never any closure, never any fulfillment or satisfaction that is lasting, and therefore we want to turn our attention away from the thrills, the strong flavors of the material world, and pursue the subtle joys of the Tao. That's the goal of Tao cultivation. So now we have pretty much summarized our discussion from the previous meeting when it comes to the first 3 lines as they apply to the Tao and apply to your life. Now there's another very important point that we got to in the first section, and this next slide is a quick reminder of that in our continuing recap. That line, that pivotal line, is line 5 that says respond to hatred with virtue. Right before that, it says great, small, many, few. The 4 English words that you see there are literal translations of the 4 Chinese characters. So it just means that no matter what it is you are working on, no matter what the matter is that you are managing, whether it's great or small, whether you are working with many, many others, or just a few, or many things, or just a few things, no matter what it is, the Tao is always to respond to negativity with something that is positive. Now, I want to quickly remind everyone that this is not what we often see in life. As you see here in the bullets, it's usually an eye for an eye. If you're good to me, I'm going to be good to you. If you're bad to me, I'm going to be worse in return. And that, an eye for an eye, is actually not in accordance with the Tao. And the reason is, as you see in the second bullet, vengeance, retribution, it only perpetuates. It does not solve anything. Once you have gotten back to as someone else, it is their turn, they think, to get back at you. So then you have to be on guard. And then when they succeed in getting back at you, it is now time again to get even, to enact further retribution. It just never ends. So in the Tao, that is the reason why we must always respond to the negative with the positive. And then I also pointed out that we all are going to encounter negativity at some point. So the way that you react to the negativity is important, and it can be little things or big things, as you see in line 4. It could be, doesn't matter what the scale is, it could be something that's huge and important in your life, or it could be just a minor interaction with someone you just happen to come across in your daily routines. It doesn't matter. Whether it's big or small, you must always practice the Tao. So this is the recap from last time. We don't want to do the an eye for an eye like many people do, because if you follow that literally, pretty soon the entire world is blind. So what we want to do instead is to follow the Tao. So let me provide some examples on what many people do and what we should do. What many people do in the world is they fight fire with fire. This is like when we use the expression, well, how do you like a dose of your own medicine? Give them a dose of their own medicine. And this is where we push back with equal or greater negativity upon encountering the negative. So when facing negative feedback, blame, or criticism, what do people often do, especially when they don't have the benefit of being guided by the wisdom of the Tao, the wisdom of Lao Tzu? which, by the way, in our world, that's most people. We know the vast majority of people we come across every day just don't know that much about the Tao. So, for instance, they will deflect. When facing negative feedback, blame, or criticism, they'll deflect it. What do I mean by that? Well, think about this expression here. When someone says, me? Who, me? What about you? It's your fault too. Why point at me? Okay, this is deflection. This is a way to deflect the blame. And this is not the only strategy that people often follow when faced with negativity. There's certainly a lot more. Let's take a look at another one. Denial. This is to not admit to the problem, not take the blame, not accept criticism, deny it. No, you have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, this is a flat out denial of whatever negative feedback or blame or criticism you receive. Here's another strategy to push back, to counter the negativity. Make it personal. Rather than to focus on the issue, focus on the person, the ad hominem. Who are you to even bring this up? What gives you the right? So here, you see the strategy. What it does is that you shift the focus on the matter being discussed to the person who wants to discuss it. Why are you blaming me? Who are you? What gives you the right? Let's talk about you. Okay, this is to make it personal. So it's similar to the first one. It's a deflection. To make it personal is a deflection to the person. Of course, deflection, the first one, can be deflecting to something else. You think that's a problem. What about this problem? So these are different strategies that one can mix and match. Yet another strategy is to minimize, not denying it, but then also not really accepting blame or criticism. To minimize it is to make something small. So for instance, when faced with criticism, why are you making such a big deal out of it? Aren't you blowing this out of proportion? Right? This is to minimize. This is to try to make something smaller. And then there's also, finally, one more strategy to talk about, to remain aloof. Not really deflecting, not denying, not making it personal, not minimizing, but guess what? I don't really care. You have obviously mistaken me for someone who cares. To be very arrogant. So look at these 5 different strategies. Haven't we all seen these being used plenty of times? Are they pleasant? When other people use it, I think we can see that it is quite unpleasant. And yet, we ourselves may sometimes use it when we forget about the Tao. So my challenge to everyone, especially for this wonderful new year we're heading into, everybody, let's all refrain from any of these tactics. Let's begin with a great start and continue with this, because to follow any of these tactics when facing negativity is to go against the Tao. These are contrary to the Tao, and they ultimately make things more difficult, not less. So my suggestion to everyone is to, now that we have pointed these out, is to not do them, not follow these particular strategies. Next, let's look at applying the Tao concept to see if we can get different and better results. So what happens when facing negative feedback, blame, or criticism? How do we respond with the positive? So there are strategies for that as well. It's really about the yin and yang. So one strategy, good strategy, is to always begin with courtesy. I mean something like this. Well, thank you for bringing this up, because it could be quite true. Like, thank you, I wasn't aware of this. If you didn't tell me, I would have no idea. Or, I had no idea this had become such a big problem. And thank you for letting me know before it becomes something really serious. Or, thank you for letting me know, otherwise I might not ever be aware of it. So begin with courtesy, always a good strategy. Second strategy to follow up on that is to ask clarifying questions. That is, to note that clarity is power. To avoid misunderstanding, you want to make sure you know exactly what is being addressed. Do not assume. Find out. When someone is bringing up negative feedback, blame, or criticism, make sure you know the context. Do you mean this action that I took or something else? Do you mean on this particular date or some other time? Under what context? With what people involved? Clarity is power. Avoid any misunderstanding so you know exactly what the other person is pointing out, what they're talking about, what they are expressing the negativity about. And then yet another strategy, this is to continue the process of clarification, is to reiterate for confirmation. This means that you demonstrate your serious intent and respect. So when the other person is responding to the clarifying questions, what are you talking about? Do you mean what I did yesterday? Or are you talking about what we did last week? Getting those clarification. And when they clarify, you want to repeat it back to them. So what I hear you say, what I'm hearing is that, and then you reiterate it in your own words, and you end with, am I correct so far? Am I getting this right? I want to make sure I get it right. This demonstrates your respect of the other party. Now, as you can see, even with just the first three strategies, this is diffusion. This is going to go a long way to diffuse a potentially explosive situation. Certainly, this can help you avoid contention. And then you want to ask for suggestions. Someone who brings up a problem will usually know what they would prefer to see instead. So what would you like to see happen to resolve this issue? Now, this is not to say that you will follow what they suggest, but this is you asking about what they think to be inclusive. And this is because people want to be part of the solution. It is natural for us. When we bring up something that we're not happy with, we all most likely want to help make it better. So you want to follow that part of human nature and then ask if they can suggest a potential solution. Not promising that you will follow exactly what they say, because what they suggest may not be reasonable. It really depends, but you want to hear them out. And that is what people want. They want to be heard. Finally, you want to suggest your own solution. You want to propose a solution of your own. And you want to incorporate, if possible, if reasonable, their suggestions in order to cover not just your own perspective, but theirs as well. So none of this is a guarantee that you will solve the problem, but these will all help. These will all get you more than halfway there. So this is what we mean by responding to the negative with the positive. This will contribute to a harmonious life free from contention. So now let's continue on with the rest of 63. Let's go back to the lines from Lao Tzu. Line 6, Lao Tzu says, plan difficult tasks through the simplest tasks. Now, I want to talk about this in terms of how the sages accomplish great or difficult tasks. This line expresses their methodology that they will always plan through the simple stuff. This is sort of their secret. What is the secret of the sages that they seem to accomplish difficult tasks with ease? Well, they do it through the simple stuff. And the cool thing about it, I find the life-changing thing for me personally is that this quote-unquote secret, not really a secret, this secret can be used for anything. It's not just about spiritual cultivation. It's very practical. I use it for everything in life. I use it at work. I use it at home. I use it for my professional duties. I use it for my personal hobbies. I always plan difficult tasks through the simplest of all tasks. So this is, I find this to be extremely practical and also very effective. It helps me get a lot of stuff done, and then people are amazed, how were you able to do that? And I also find that this is very interesting because I used to read up on a lot of self-help books, self-improvement books. And I remember that there was a technique being taught that I learned called swallow the frog. And the person teaching that basically said that if you start out imagining all the stuff that you have to do as frogs, the more difficult the task, the bigger the task, the bigger the frog, and the more difficult the task is, the uglier the frog is. And then you have to visualize yourself swallowing the biggest and ugliest frog. Why? Well, the person the self-improvement guru who taught this said that once you have done that, once you have swallowed the biggest, ugliest frog, everything else will be easy. Then you're going to have smooth sailing the rest of the day. Because in comparison to the first frog that you swallow, all the other frogs are smaller and not quite as ugly. So I tried this technique. I never got it to work well for me, and I gave up on it. And only much, much later on did I realize that I was actually doing things exactly opposed to what Lao Tzu taught. The better way is exactly as Lao Tzu says, not to swallow the frog, but to do it the other way. And remember, the Tao is down to earth. If it is authentic, it is about everyday living. The authentic Tao is about the practical. It's a blueprint for succeeding at pretty much anything. It is the number one most practical and for me the most useful part of the Tao Te Ching. I think it may be simple, but definitely I think I find profound and powerful wisdom. It is, for me, life-changing. And I want to offer it to you in the same spirit. May this quote-unquote secret help you achieve every success that you could possibly want. It is really not a secret at all. It's a secret that hides in plain sight. So start with the easy, the simple. The second part of it is very similar. Line 7 says, achieve large tasks through the smallest tasks. So just like the previous line, what you want to get started with are the simple and small things. And this is also very practical because we all know from experience that a large, big project may seem overwhelming. And the key insight from Lao Tzu is that all projects are composed of smaller components, sub-projects, tasks, subtasks. The components can be further broken down into even smaller components. So sub-projects can reside within a larger sub-project. Tasks can be broken up into even smaller tasks, and so on. There's no end to how far you can push this. And this applies to absolutely everything. It's not just the big projects that we're looking at. When I say everything, I really mean that. And all projects and tasks can be seen in this universal perspective. They can be big, small, difficult, or easy, many or few. Lao Tzu says, start with the smallest and or the easiest. As you're facing a big task or a big project, there's definitely going to be something about it that is the smallest and easiest thing to do. It's easier to see what that is. Start with that. Then find the next one that is also that then has become the smallest and easiest. And if you don't see something that is small or easy, it's time to break up a task into its components. So this process continues on until eventually you are done. So there's a little bit more to it that I want to remark on. And I want to specifically point out for everyone the tremendous, in my mind, the tremendous benefits of starting small. That's what this line 7 is all about. Achieve large tasks through the smallest tasks. What are the benefits? Well, first of all, it's a simple idea that can be applied to any set of tasks. Second thing is that it makes it really easy to get going. It minimizes inertia. So the reason why I used to procrastinate all the time is because I could not get myself going, but miraculously to me, if I were to break down the task to something small and then smaller yet, at some point, it's trivial for me to get started. The inertia that I had before when I procrastinated has completely gone away. So it's great for that. It's also easy to keep going. You maximize the momentum. After minimizing inertia, you maximize momentum. So right off the bat, that's a good recipe for success, for completion. It's easy to keep going because at any one time in the course of working on the project, you are always focusing on the easiest and smallest task at hand. So it's one easy step after another. Then, as you are maximizing your momentum, that you just keep going and going and going, you build confidence. Small tasks are completed one after another. You start racking up the stuff that is done. This builds confidence and it also builds experience. You learn by doing and you get better the more you do it. Because of the confidence and the expertise, the experience that you build, it is actually fun. Work becomes as enjoyable as it can possibly be. It's certainly less stressful. So keep these ideas in mind, and I want to further reinforce the basic concept with a story that I would like to share with you. This is a story that I call A Conversation of Clocks. There was once a new clock that was put on a shelf, joining two old clocks that were already there up on the shelf. So the two old clocks, they were going tick tock, tick tock. They were counting 1 second after another. They welcomed the new clock. It was a special time for them because 1 year had just ended and another one had just begun. So one of the old clocks said to the new clock, "Come, come, start counting time with us. We have 31,536,000 seconds still ahead of us in order to complete another year. Start counting." What? The new clock said. The new clock was shocked. Over 31 million seconds? Did you just say over 31 million? Wow, that's too big. That's too big a job for me. I can't possibly do it. The other old clock cut in. Oh, don't listen to him. And don't worry. All you have to do is to count 1 second every second. Just one. Do exactly what we do. That's all there is to it. The new clock is like, it can't be that easy, can it? The new clock was skeptical. All right, let me give it a try. Together, they went tick tock, tick tock. The new clock started keeping pace with the old clocks. He found it wasn't difficult at all. There was just enough time in 1 second to count once. No more, no less. He had no need to rush. And there was no need to speed up or slow down. It was actually quite relaxing. Tick tock, tick tock. Much later, he suddenly became aware that a lot of time came and went. Without him quite realizing it, another year had passed. He had counted exactly 31,536,000 times, and he was still going strong. The end. So I find this story especially timely now that we are transitioning from 1 year to another. And of course, this story isn't really about clocks, is it? It isn't really about the number of seconds in a year. It's actually just another way to talk about the journey of 1,000 miles. So, each ticking of the clock is like putting one foot in front of the other as you take your steps on the journey of 1,000 miles. So how can you complete such a long journey? Well, one step at a time. No more, no less. Left, right, left, right. There is no rush. There is no need to speed up or slow down. When you look at it through the dial, you may find, like the new clock, that the journey is actually quite relaxing. Left, right, left, right. So let's generalize this idea into an overall principle, the Tao. So first of all, we know all big tasks seem daunting at first. Then, Laozi is also pointing out every big task can be broken up into smaller tasks. 1 year seems like a huge number of seconds, but it's composed of individual seconds. So the smaller tasks may seem trivial rather than intimidating. So millions of seconds, yeah, that's intimidating, but 1 second, well, it's trivial. It's nothing. It's here, it's gone. And if you can look at life in that same way, you begin to look at it as Laozi did when he wrote these lines. So when you work on the smaller tasks, taking 1 second at a time, taking 1 step at a time, living 1 day at a time, there is much less pressure in working on the smaller tasks. You may even find it relaxing, like the new clock in the story. So one small task after another is the way to complete a large task. And what we want to do is use this idea for all the big challenges in your life. It's perfectly normal for everyone to feel a little bit overwhelmed, stressed out when confronted with something big. But again, there are no exceptions. As Laozi points out, something big is made up of many smaller things. And when you break them up, when you break it up into smaller items, you want to get to the point where it seems trivial, that it can be done quickly and easily. As long as the task does not seem trivial yet, I would suggest breaking them up even more. And keep in mind that it's okay to fail at small things. When you divide it up into tiny little things, you can always redo it and it doesn't matter. And enough successes under your belt will get you on your way to the grand completion. Hence, the line from Laozi at the very bottom of this slide. Achieve large tasks through the smallest tasks. Okay, we're now looking at lines 8 and 9. The difficult tasks of the world must be handled through the simple tasks. And right off the bat, you can see that this is a way to restate what we have already talked about. It is a expansion and emphasis of line 6. So to kind of show everyone what line 6 looks like, I'll put it down here at the bottom. Line 6, plan difficult tasks through the simplest tasks. So 8 and 9 further expand on that and to emphasize that. So this is definitely, at least for me personally, the cure for procrastination. Dwelling on the difficulty of something that you have to do, that is what robs you of motivation. But then if you are faced with something that's really easy, you're likely to think, I'm just going to get this out of the way. So this is the flip side of the coin. Conversely, focusing on the simplest subtasks will get you going. And oftentimes when it comes to procrastination, that's the toughest thing, is to get going. And if you suffer from that, as I have, then you know that this is really the crucial key. How do I get myself going? You know, I used to, when I procrastinated, I knew that if somehow I could get going, then everything else will be okay. I could keep myself going. But it's that first step that was the hardest. And let me also say from experience that this always works. This is a surefire method. It's the easiest way to start anything, literally the easiest, because you're finding among what you have to do the easiest way to get going. So by definition, that's exactly what it is. Easiest way. And also speaking from experience, how did I know that I overcame procrastination? Well, only when I actually started doing something that I have been putting off and continue doing it. And that's when I confirmed for myself that this method always works. And if you also find yourself procrastinating about something, I would invite you to prove it to yourself as well. And it could be anything. Just find something that you've been putting off, something you've been postponing, avoiding. Oh, I'll take care of it tomorrow. I'll take care of it next week. So challenge yourself to face the task, break it down into individual action items. Ask yourself, what is the simplest one? What is something that you can do right away? And if you find that, take action on it immediately. If not, go back to the previous step and break down the action items further. Okay, then let's also take a look at 10 and 11. As you can see here, 10 and 11, the large tasks of the world must be handled through the small tasks. So you can see that this is very similar to what we have already talked about. This is also an expansion and an emphasis of a previous line. So just like before, I'll put it down here. Line 7, achieve large tasks through the smallest tasks. And in the Tao Te Ching, overall, it's very concise. So when you have an instance like this, where within the same chapter, you're repeating the same idea. Lao Tzu is writing the same idea, stating it in different ways. That is his way, that's his indication of how important this is. And that's why I say repetition like this warrants special attention from us. And it's the difficult and easy, it's the large and the small. If something is too big, break it down into something that is small. If something is hard, break it down to something that is easy. And you know from experience, when something is small enough, you're going to tackle it right away. Maybe the small task is to, step 1, get up from the couch. Okay, maybe that's the task. And continue with that until you are over the hump, that you get over the challenge. And that initial inertia that you have to overcome is the most challenging of all. Okay, so there's a saying about quote unquote, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So this is a Western expression of the same idea from ancient China, where you want to do something that's really big, you gotta do it in small, bite-sized chunks, digestible chunks. So to reiterate, so we can say the same thing that we said about the difficult and easy, and that is, if you find something that is too big, it's only because you haven't broken it down enough yet. And I also want to point out that as you complete each small task, it gives you earned satisfaction. That is, you can feel satisfied because you have actually done it. You can see right in front of you that it's a completed task. It's a positive energy that you can harness. You can apply it to the next small and easy task. So this becomes like an iterative process that builds upon itself, greater and greater momentum. And when I say over the hump, that's the point in which you discover that, well, it's actually harder now to stop or slow down. It's actually easier just to keep going or maybe even speed up. So, and we also say, another Western expression is that we say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. This is also pointing to the virtue of the small. An ounce of prevention is small, and yet by doing it in advance, by doing it early, it is worth a pound of cure much, much later on. So the overall principle is that you want to handle a problem while it is still a small problem. So there's a well-known story to illustrate that principle as well, and this one from the Tao tradition. I would like to share that story with you. The field is very different from the conversation of clocks. This story comes from ancient times. It is a story called The Doctor and the Ruler. Once upon a time in ancient China, during the Warring Stage period, there was a highly regarded doctor by the name of Bian Que. He had an amazing ability to diagnose illness through observations. One day, he visited with the ruler Cai Huangong in the land of Qi. After they spoke for a while, Bian Que reported to the ruler that he was afflicted with an illness in the early stages of the illness. He said, "Your Majesty, your illness is at the surface level. If it's left untreated, I'm afraid it will go deeper." The ruler said, "I feel fine. Whatever this illness is, I do not have it." So Bian Que left, and after he left, the ruler said to his ministers, "Medical doctors like to treat those who are not really sick and then claim credit for the healing." So he was just, that wasn't true. So after 10 days, Bian Que, the doctor, came by to see the ruler again. He observed as before, and then he said, "Your Majesty, your illness is now at the level of skin and flesh. If it is untreated, it will go deeper into the body." The ruler ignored this and did not respond. It was awkward, and Bian Que had no choice but to leave. Even after he left, the ruler was displeased. He expressed his displeasure. Why was this doctor so annoying? He kept bringing up this non-existent illness. 10 more days passed, and again, Bian Que, the doctor, came for his visits. He looked at the ruler, and he was alarmed. He said, "Your Majesty, your illness has gone into the stomach. If we do not treat it as soon as possible, it will go even deeper into your body." As before, the ruler ignored the remark and remained silent as if he hadn't heard anything. Bian Que knew that the situation was very serious, but he could not do anything about it if the patient was not willing to cooperate. As he took his leave, he saw that the ruler seemed even more displeased than before. After 10 more days, Bian Que saw the ruler from a distance, and immediately he turned around to get further away. This was definitely something that did not go unnoticed. The ruler saw this and sent a messenger to go after him. The messenger caught up with the doctor and asked why he was in such a hurry to leave. Bianque said it was due to the ruler's illness. He explained, you see, when the illness is at the surface level, it can be treated with applying ointment. When it goes to the skin and flesh level, it can be treated with acupuncture. When it goes deeper into the stomach, it can still be treated with medicinal potions. When it finally goes even deeper into the bones, then it is all up to fate, because it can no longer be treated. That is the case now with His Majesty. His illness has gone into his bones, so there is nothing I can do about it. 5 days after this, the ruler felt much pain and realized that he was indeed very ill. He ordered his men to fetch the doctor at once, but they could not find him. Bianque had already escaped to another kingdom. Not long after that, the ruler succumbed to the illness and died. The end. So everyone, what can we get out of this story? You can probably guess already that when Tao masters tell this particular story, based on the history of the Warring States period, they're not really talking about medical issues at all. Rather, they are addressing the problems that we come across in life. So let's break the story down into its components to get a better sense of the insights from the Tao perspective. First, let's look at stages of illness. So according to this story, an illness is easy to treat in its initial stages when it's just starting to take hold. That is when it is the easiest to treat. If you were to ignore the illness, it will go deeper into the body, which increases the difficulty of treatment. And after a while of this progression of increasing difficulty, the difficult becomes the impossible. As the doctor said in the story, it is all up to fate, because there is nothing that the humans can do about the illness. So what about the other perspective? What is the problem on the ruler's side? Well, he initially denied that he was sick at all, that he had no illness. Whatever discomfort he might have felt, he just dismissed it right out of hand. And then later on, as it became more serious, he refused to admit that he was wrong. And this is really the role that the human ego plays. It plays that same role in all kinds of different problems that we encounter in life. There are many different kinds of problems, just like the body can be sick or ill in many different ways. Whether it's the sickness, the illness of the body, or a problem in life, they all follow the same pattern. When you catch them early, you can treat them, you can correct them, remedy them with relative ease. What a lot of people do instead is similar to the ruler in that many people use a combination of ignorance and arrogance. If you were to ignore the problem does not go away. Indeed, it may get worse and worse until one day when everything comes crashing down. In the story, that's when the ruler felt the pain and then soon after died. Let me also point out that when we talk about this, when Tao masters tell this particular story, they're pointing out not just the problems in life, in the material world, but also problems in the intangible aspects of life, i.e., the spiritual cultivation. So all of these lead me to the line from the Tao Te Ching: the difficult tasks of the world must be handled through the simple tasks. Applied to this particular story, it means that a disease that eventually becomes very difficult to treat and impossible to treat, when it's small, when it's simple, it has to be handled at that time. So let's explore the different patterns as they manifest in terms of illness, problems in life, and cultivation. As we have seen in the story, at the surface level, you can treat the illness with ointment. And in ancient times, what they would do was that they would soak cloth in medicinal ointment or medicinal potion, and then apply that to the body, a surface level treatment. So when the problem is at the beginning, when the problem is still just more of a potential or just starting to rear its head, at that point, it can be headed off, like when we say, nip it in the bud, headed off at the pass. Those are Western expressions about the same wisdom. A potential issue can be prevented. What about in cultivation? What happens in cultivation when a problem is small? Well, it can occur when you are reviewing your own words and actions. The question to ask is, in what I said and what I did, how I interacted with other people, was I acting and speaking in accordance to the Tao? So for most people, that's not always the case. We've got good moments and not so great moments. We've got times when we are calm and collected, at our best, really, and then there were also times when we, quote unquote, lost it. And speaking from personal experience, definitely, human beings are not perfect. I am certainly imperfect. So there will be times when I lose my temper. That's actually not in accordance with the Tao, because I am likely not responding to the negative with the positive when I lose my temper. What about the next level further in? Well, in the story, it's when the illness has gone to the skin and flesh. So it's actually not at the surface level anymore. It's gone deeper. It's gone below the skin. And this can still be treated with acupuncture. And this is a metaphor for a problem that's gone deeper, that's manifested more into reality, still in the initial phase. At this point, acupuncture is a metaphor for being able to correct the problem in a fairly easy way. So at the initial phase of a problem, it is still easy to handle. And in cultivation, that initial phase of a personal issue with cultivation is the realization that you have veered off the path, that what you have done is actually pretty far away from the Tao, and it's time to get back on track. So the overall, you can see how this works in cultivation. We must observe our own conduct to make sure we're still maintaining ourselves in alignment with the Tao. In life, it is the same idea. We observe a situation in order to discern a problem in it, if there's a problem. let's explore the next level down. Okay, now the illness has gone to the stomach, and it can be treated by taking medicinal potion. And this is often cooked using medicinal herbs in ancient China and can be extremely effective. So a problem that's becoming more serious is a problem that has become entrenched. When a problem is entrenched, it's set, it's more permanent, it requires more effort to root it out, to get rid of it, to correct it. In cultivation, a personal problem, a spiritual issue, becomes more entrenched when you dismiss or ignore your flaws. And this can lead to further issues in your spiritual cultivation. Lastly, in the final parts of the story, we saw that the illness has gone into the bones. So it's beyond remedies. It's beyond anything that the doctor could do. So what happens when a problem gets to that level? Well, it's a disaster. It's likely to cause damage. You are likely to suffer much damage. And this could be just, suffering in general in life, the disappointments, the upsets, the heartbreak. It could be a problem that manifests in a material way, a loss of financial resources, maybe a loss of one's mental well-being or physical well-being, etc. And then lastly, for spiritual cultivation, you can have spiritual issues that become set, that becomes permanent and cause problems, serious issues affecting your life. So no matter if it is a problem in life or an issue in spiritual cultivation, they all follow the same pattern. This is the reason why Tao masters tell this particular story, hoping that we will be wise enough to apply the same patterns to everything that we observe, externally and internally. So now it's time to return to the Tao Te Ching once again to go back to the lines. So line 12, therefore, sages never attempt great deeds all through life. I want to isolate the last three characters there. The pinyin, 不为大. Literally, the three characters mean no, do, big. Not do something that is big. And the meaning is that sages never take on too much at a time. So just like the new clock, story is not taken on, 2 ticks per second, but only 1 tick. Sages never take on too much at a time. For the sages, it's 1 thought at a time, 1 worry at a time, 1 idea at a time, living 1 day at a time, taking 1 step at a time. So this is similar to our Western expression, don't bite off more than you can chew. Always bite off what you can comfortably handle. And from previous lines, we know the sages always start with the small and easy, so this makes a lot of sense. At any given time, the sages are always focusing on the smallest tasks at hand. And that is something that we should all follow. Out of all the things that you can work on at any one time, you always want to focus on the smallest and easiest things and get that done, get it out of the way. You can then claim the accomplishment. And then I want to focus on the 3 characters of the next line. 成其大. And remember, the Q in the pinyin system is actually the CH sound. It's a little confusing sometimes to native English speakers. So the three characters literally, 成 means to complete, 其 it's possessive, 大 the big, the great, greatness. So the meaning is that sages complete great tasks based on small tasks. And what sages regard as easy may not seem that way to most people, of course, but that's because the more they do, the better they get. It's what I said before about adding or building to your expertise. As you keep on working on small and easy things, you get greater confidence and you get better and better at it. In time, the small things that you work on become big things for other people, and that is because you've gotten better at it. You've gotten so good at it that things that are easy for you are not easy for other people. So overall, this is how sages make the difficult look effortless. Sometimes people are amazed, but then when they see the underlying mechanism of how this really works, it's actually simple. It's actually quite clear how they do their quote unquote magic. It's really no magic at all. Now we can look at both together from 不为大 to 成其大. So this is about the big and small. Keep in mind that big and small are complementary dualities. So if you look at the yin and yang symbol, you know that they are always in an interplay with one another. So then sages focus on little things. That's how they achieve big things. There is the interplay of yin and yang, the small and the big. So there are other similar yin and yang manifestations that are ever present in life. So for instance, those with big ego have little or no substance. Those who don't talk a whole lot, who talk little, turn out to possess great talent. Again, the interplay of the small and the big. Those who take on a big task end up with little or no success. So if you rush at a big task, tackle the biggest task you can, chances are you end up with little or no success because of that universal interplay of yin and yang. A product with all the small details just right achieve great popularity. Again, the small and the big. And we've seen examples of this where companies that put out very well thought out products where every detail matters, they end up achieving great success. So the little and the big. Now, I see that we are approaching the end of our time together today, so we have to jump ahead to the summary. There's still quite a bit more to discuss. We'll save that for next time. For now, let's go through the summary so far in chapter 63. Last time, we looked at this summary, how to live your life. And this is basically another way to look at the first three lines. The first three lines have three characters each, and together they were talking about an approach of wu wei, unattached action, focusing on the process instead of the end result. And then non-interference, minding your own business rather than everybody else's business. And then lastly, appreciating the goodness, that is taking a drink of the pure essence of water, that is life. And the best things in life can be right in front of you. It can be ever present. It can be taking a deep breath, just breathing in deeply, inhale, and then enjoying the feeling of relaxation as you push the breath back out as you exhale. So all of this is about cultivating a receptive perception to notice when you have something really good in life, something that is really a blessing, that may not cost anything, but is beyond value in life. That's the Tao. Now, let's take a look at the summary for today. You have now seen the quote-unquote secret, that is not really a secret, of the Tao sages to accomplish anything. And not just accomplish, but to accomplish anything easily and in style. So first, you want to respect the task, because it may not be as simple as it appears. Those who think that everything is easy, they end up encountering a lot of difficulties because they assume too much of their own abilities and they assume too little of the challenge that is ahead of them. So first, you want to respect what you have to work on. Second, out of that respect, you want to plan things out before you actually tackle it. And you want to balance being prepared with being flexible. That is, having set up a plan, you want to leave room for you to improvise, for you to change things around when you actually get into it. The situation may not be exactly as you have foreseen, and if so, you have the flexibility to make some adjustments. Now, people sometimes think of planning as locking yourself into the rigidity of a framework that cannot change. In the Tao, planning is done so that you don't worry about it. You have something to fall back on, and then you can change it around if necessary. It gives you the confidence to improvise. Next, you want to start out right. And this is what we spent a lot of time talking about today. You always want to begin with the small and easy. Look for the part of it that you can get done right away. Get those done, get better at it, and feel accomplished. This creates momentum, and you want to make use of that momentum, because once you are revved up, the going just gets easier and easier. And before you know it, you're going to be done and you're going to be happy. So when we talk about the small and easy to start with, it's similar to our Western expression, the low-hanging fruits, the quick victories. You want to get those done and you want to rack up experience. And the planning part of it is, it's all about anticipation. It's all about looking ahead. So these are practical ways to apply the Tao to life. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.